A few days before his death, a warrior who had survived more than 60 duels sat alone inside a quiet cave. He had defeated every opponent who challenged him. Armies had studied his methods. Students had followed him for years, hoping to learn the secret of his strength. Yet in his final days, he wrote something strange. Not a battle manual, not a strategy guide. Instead, he wrote 21 short rules about how to live. These rules were not about defeating enemies. They were about defeating dependence, about removing every chain that quietly controls a human life. The man was Miyamoto Musashi. The document he left behind was called Dokkodo. At first glance, the rules appear simple, almost cold. Some people read them and feel uncomfortable, because if a person truly lived by them, they would become very difficult to control. This is the silent power of Dokkodo, and it begins with a man who believed he was strong. Kenji believed he lived with discipline. He woke early, he worked long hours, he exercised regularly and kept his life organized. From the outside, people described him as focused and responsible. He liked hearing those words because they confirmed the image he had built of himself. But beneath the routine, there were quiet dependencies shaping his decisions. He checked his phone constantly to see who had responded to his messages. He replayed conversations in his mind, wondering if others respected him. When his work was praised, he felt energized. When it was ignored, his motivation quietly collapsed. He believed he controlled his life, but his emotional state was being decided by invisible forces. Approval, comfort, expectations. One evening, after a difficult week, where several plans had failed and recognition never arrived, Kenji felt something unfamiliar. Restlessness. Not the restless energy of ambition. Something heavier. A quiet awareness that his sense of control might be an illusion. While searching for clarity, he encountered the final teachings of Miyamoto Musashi, not the famous battle strategies from the Book of Five Rings, but the quiet document written near the end of Musashi's life, Dokkodo, the way of walking alone. At first, Kenji thought it was about isolation, about rejecting the world. But the deeper he read, the more unsettling the message became. Musashi was not teaching loneliness, he was teaching freedom. The first rule of Dokkodo is simple: accept everything exactly the way it is. At first glance, this sounds passive, but within the discipline of the warrior, acceptance is not surrender. It is clarity. A swordsman standing in battle cannot waste energy wishing the opponent were weaker. He cannot complain about the terrain, the weather, or the circumstances. Reality is already decided. Resistance only clouds perception. Musashi understood that most people exhaust themselves fighting reality rather than responding to it. Kenji began noticing how often he resisted what had already happened. A delayed message created irritation. A critical comment produced defensiveness. Unexpected changes in plans created anxiety. None of these reactions improved the situation. They only drained attention. Acceptance does something powerful. It removes the emotional noise between a person and the present moment. When a mind stops arguing with reality, it becomes quiet enough to act with precision. This is the first step toward a life no one can control. Because when circumstances no longer dictate your emotions, manipulation loses its power. Another rule of Dokkodo feels even more severe. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Many misunderstand this idea. Musashi was not condemning joy. He was warning against dependence. Pleasure becomes dangerous when it quietly turns into necessity. When a person needs comfort to function, their behavior can be directed through comfort. When someone needs approval to feel stable, their actions will slowly align with whoever provides that approval. Over time, Kenji began noticing how subtle this dependence had become. A difficult task was often delayed in favor of something easier. Moments of silence were replaced with constant stimulation. Discomfort was avoided whenever possible. None of these choices seemed harmful individually, but together, they created a quiet pattern. Avoid difficulty. Seek relief. Musashi's philosophy moves in the opposite direction. The warrior does not chase pleasure. He trains himself to remain stable without it. This creates something rare, a mind that cannot be easily steered. Another line from Dokkodo appears almost cryptic. Do not rely on partial feelings. In modern terms, Musashi was warning about emotional impulses that arrive before understanding. Anger can feel justified before the situation is fully known. Excitement can appear before the consequences are considered. Fear can arise even when no real danger exists. A warrior who follows every emotional signal becomes unpredictable and vulnerable. Kenji began observing his reactions during ordinary moments. A negative comment created immediate defensiveness. A small mistake produced disproportionate frustration. Praise inflated his confidence far beyond the reality of his skill. These reactions were partial feelings, incomplete signals arriving before clear thought. Musashi's discipline required something difficult. Pause. Observe the emotion without immediately acting on it. This small gap between feeling and action is where control returns to the individual. One of the most powerful rules in Dokkodo is also one of the simplest. Think lightly of yourself. This does not mean disrespecting your life or abilities. It means releasing the constant need to protect the image of who you believe you are. Many internal battles come from defending identity. If someone criticizes your work, it feels like they are criticizing you. If a mistake occurs, it feels like personal failure rather than information. Musashi trained himself to separate ego from action. When a person stops protecting their image, they gain something extraordinary. They become teachable. Kenji realized how often his decisions had been shaped by the desire to appear competent rather than the desire to improve. Once that pressure faded, mistakes stopped feeling like threats. They became adjustments. The warrior does not defend an identity. He refines a practice. Another rule from Dokkodo instructs the reader not to cling to possessions. For a man who spent years moving between battles, villages, and mountains, this idea was practical. But the deeper meaning extends far beyond objects. Possessions create invisible attachments. The more a person believes they need something to maintain their lifestyle, the easier it becomes to control them through the potential loss of that thing. Musashi deliberately reduced these dependencies. His clothing was simple. His living conditions were minimal. His focus remained on skill, discipline, and awareness. Kenji began experimenting with small forms of voluntary simplicity. He reduced distractions, removed unnecessary commitments, simplified routines that once felt essential. Each removal created something unexpected: space. And within that space, attention sharpened. As Kenji continued studying Dokkodo, he realized something important. The document was not a list of moral rules. It was a process of elimination. Musashi was removing every weakness that allowed external forces to steer a person's life. Dependence on comfort, dependence on praise, dependence on identity, dependence on possessions. Each removal made the individual harder to influence. This is why the text is called The Way of Walking Alone. It does not mean rejecting society or relationships. It means developing an internal foundation that remains stable even when approval disappears, circumstances shift, or expectations collapse. When a person reaches that point, something subtle changes. They become calm in situations where others panic. They act according to principle rather than pressure. Their direction becomes internally chosen. And this kind of person cannot easily be controlled. Months passed. Kenji's life looked similar from the outside. He still worked. He still spoke with others. His routines remained disciplined, but internally, the structure had changed. He reacted less quickly to emotional signals. Praise and criticism lost their sharp edges. Comfort became optional rather than necessary. Some people noticed a difference. They described him as calmer, more focused, harder to influence with arguments or pressure. But the most significant change was invisible. Silence had entered his mind. The constant negotiation with approval, pleasure, and identity had faded. In its place was something steady. Clarity. Musashi had spent his final days reducing life to its essential principles. And through those 21 quiet rules, he had left behind something more valuable than combat techniques, a method for building a mind that stands on its own. Conclusion. Near the end of his life, Miyamoto Musashi did not write about defeating enemies. He wrote about defeating dependence. The silent power of Dokkodo lies in its simplicity. Each rule removes something unnecessary. Each removal strengthens independence. Accept reality as it is. Do not chase pleasure. Observe emotions without obeying them. Think lightly of yourself. Detach from what you do not truly need. These principles do not create a dramatic transformation overnight. Instead, they reshape the structure of a life slowly, quietly, and permanently. And over time, something remarkable begins to happen. When comfort no longer controls you, it loses its leverage. When approval no longer defines you, it loses its power. When identity no longer traps you, growth becomes natural. This was the final lesson of a warrior who spent his life studying conflict. The strongest person is not the one who dominates others. It is the one who cannot be dominated.